I want to talk today about someone who is shown in the Bible living through some horrendous difficulties and constantly bringing glory to God. A man who was enslaved, a man who was put in prison, and a man who went on to rule Egypt in God's name and in Pharaoh's name, but for God. I suppose you all know already that I'm speaking about Joseph, who started life as a favourite son. He got the posh clothes, he got the easy jobs. He was very much his dad's favourite. He was, to be honest, a spoiled brat. Now, Joseph's a personal hero of mine. I don't like talking about him like that, but that's who he was. 17 years old, and he had everything already, and boy did he know it. His brothers didn't like him. He lorded it over them. He bragged about dreams, about his fortune. He told tales to his father about what they were doing. He was not the nicest guy, and probably not an easy man to get on with. And then he lost everything. He was stripped and robbed by his own brothers, who were planning to kill him, but later changed their minds, and I think more for profit than anything else, sold him into slavery. It wasn't pity that spared their hand. And something happened in Joseph, because he went from being a spoiled brat who couldn't cope with that sort of situation to being a hard worker. And you can see him grow. He got to Egypt. He was sold on to a man called Potiphar, who was just a slave owner at that stage. But Joseph worked hard, and Potiphar recognized that. And more to the point, Potiphar recognized that it was God working through Joseph that was bringing profit to him. And Potiphar put Joseph in charge of his household. I think there's two things that speak to me at every point in Joseph's life. One is that God blessed him, but the other, and almost the more important, is that Joseph worked throughout his life. God blessed in Potiphar's house. God blessed all that Joseph did, and Joseph wasn't unwilling to roll up his sleeves and get down and do his work. And Potiphar liked that and recognized God's blessing and put him in charge. And then again, Joseph lost everything. Potiphar's wife told lies about him, and I don't know if Potiphar believed the lies or if he was politically unable to shame his wife or something like that. But one way or another, Joseph, completely unfairly, was thrown in prison. Now, prison today, don't get me wrong, I don't want to be there. But hey, you've got tellies, you've got comfortable beds, you've got plumbed toilets. That's not the way prison was in Joseph's day. Joseph's day, prisoners were worked until they died. They didn't have any plumbing, any toilets, let alone plumbed ones. They lived in their own mess. They never bathed. They never really had any luxury at all. They were grateful if they got fed. And they worked until they died. Now, if I was in that situation, I'm not sure I could do what Joseph did. Because he just kept on. He worked. He continued to trust God. And it says again, the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love. And the jailer recognized that and put Joseph in charge. And again it says, whatever was done in the prison, Joseph did. So again, you see Joseph working, and you see Joseph receiving God's blessing, even in the toughest situations. A bit later, it doesn't say how long, but I imagine a few years later, Joseph ended up in charge of two prisoners. One was a baker, one was a cupbearer, probably a butler, who had displeased Pharaoh. These were senior guys in Egypt's government. But Pharaoh had fallen out with them. We don't know why, and he'd thrown them in prison. and they ended up under Joseph's care. Each of these men had troubling dreams that kept them awake at night and that they couldn't understand. Now, Joseph had some experience with dreams. He'd had a couple of his own with interpretations that folks at the time didn't like, but he might have thought he knew what he was doing, but that's not what he said. The first thing he said in chapter 40, verse 8, he gave the credit to God. He said, the interpretations belong to God. Tell me what your dreams are. There was no sense of, I can tell you. There's no sense of, I'm good at this. There was a very clear, there's one man who knows what you've dreamt, and there's one man who can tell you what it means. Ask me, and he'll, through me, God can tell you. For one of these two men, the dream was not good news. The baker went on to be hanged, and for one of the men, it was good news, because the cupbearer was really foretold in his dream to be fully restored. I guess exonerated of whatever he'd been put in prison for, and put back in his old position. Joseph saw this coming and asked him to remember him. Remember me. Tell Pharaoh about me. Tell him that I'm in prison and I'm not here justly. Tell him that I can help. 3 days later, the prophecies in these dreams came true. The baker was hanged and the cupbearer was restored. And the cupbearer forgot about Joseph and he was left in squalor. Again, I don't know that in that situation I'd have done what Joseph did, because I suspect I'd have been giving up and wallowing in self-pity. I suspect Joseph carried on working. I suspect that everything that happened in prison happened because Joseph did it for the next 2 years. What happened 2 years later was that there were more dreams, and this time it was Pharaoh they were troubling. Pharaoh was really the king of Egypt. There's no other way of describing him. His word was law. Pretty much anything he wanted he had, but he wasn't sleeping at night. He was having dreams and he didn't like them. And his own wise men, his own interpreters, his own wizards could give him nothing. They didn't know what these dreams meant. They confused them. Finally, at this stage, 2 years after being rescued himself, the cupbearer remembered Joseph and said, there is a man in prison who has interpreted dreams and could help you. And Pharaoh, who was desperate, I suspect, called for Joseph to be brought out of prison. And again, the first thing Joseph did was not, hey, this is my big chance, this is what I've been waiting for. I can do this and I can make it big. Joseph said to the Pharaoh, I can't do what you want. I can't interpret dreams. God can. Now tell him what your dreams are. Throughout Joseph's life, you see him pointing to God. Potiphar recognized that it was God's blessing that was bringing profit. The prisoner recognized that God was with Joseph and loved him. Sorry, the jailer recognized that God was with Joseph and loved him. And here again, in front of one of the most powerful men in the world, Joseph says, not me, God. I think that's a huge thing to me, that even a man in the pit in Egypt, in the dungeon, was saying, not me, God. He interpreted Pharaoh's dreams. We all know we're going to have 7 years of glorious crops. It's going to rain when we need rain. It's going to shine when we need shine. You've never seen anything like this. And then after those 7 years, it's going to shine when we need rain, and it's not going to rain at all. And you're going to have 7 years of no crops. Nothing worth eating at all. The cows will die, the crops won't grow, and the rivers will dry up. It's going to be horrific. But God is warning you, said Joseph. God is